One of the most important things about travel photography is being intentional about how you capture that photo exactly. That's what makes photos stand out, makes them amazing instead of just snapshots, instead of boring snapshots. And one of the keys to that intention is making sure that your subject is the star. Make sure that subject really pops and is obvious when the viewer looks at that photo later. Well, today we're going to talk about 4 ways that you can do just that. Make sure that your subject is the star that they deserve to be. If you're new to this channel, I'm Diane, and this is the PhotoFluent channel. And our goal here is to help you turn down the volume of your inner critic, get really confident with your camera so that you can creatively capture all those beautiful travel experiences for scroll-stopping photos that you can't wait to share when you get home. So make sure you subscribe because new photos come out all the time. Well, maybe not all the time, but probably about once a week. So make sure you subscribe and turn on the notifications. Okay, let's jump in to those 4 ways that you can make your subject really stand out in your photos. The first way is to know what your subject is. Identify the subject ahead of time. Okay, I know that sounds kind of obvious, but it's not always. I think it's easy to get caught up in the moment and see this area, this scene, this beautiful landscape, and just start snapping away. But if we take a step back, take a breath, and then be intentional about how you compose the photo, about how you think about the photo as you're capturing it, you can get a whole different experience in the end when you're viewing your photos. And whoever else is looking at your photo will have a different experience also. That's our goal, right? For those scroll-stopping photos that people say, wow, when they look at. Okay, so the first thing you do is identify the subject. And no, we don't always do that. We rush in, take a bunch of photos, go to the next spot. So think about what's the key, what's the focal point, what's the most important part of that image, of that composition, of that setup that you're looking at that particular moment. Now, don't overthink this. You don't have to take so much time out of your vacation, out of your trip, that you're thinking about and composing each photo so methodically. Just think about what's the center of attention here. That's your subject. Okay, number 2 is depth of field. And to use a shallow depth of field is the best way to really bring emphasis to your subject. So say your subject is this lady shopping at the market. You have all of this stuff going on, right? You have the produce and the vendors and all the other people shopping and the buildings. How do you make her stand out? Well, a shallow depth of field will make her in focus and everything else slightly blurry. And as humans, what we look at is what is in focus and what is brightest. So if you want to draw attention to something, make sure it's sharply focused. And if you have a shallow depth of field and it's the only thing that's sharply focused, then that's exactly what your viewer will look at. Now, the third tip is about composition. So first we talked about how you think about the setup of the photo. Second, we talked a little bit about camera settings using that shallow depth of field. Now it's about composition and how you arrange what's going to be in your frame. You can't always move things that are in your frame. If it's a travel partner, sure, you can ask them to move. But if it's a person like that lady at the market, or if it's a building, or if it's a lot of things when you're traveling, you can't say, hey, move, because it's just stuck there. Or you want to capture things as they're happening and you document what you're seeing. So you don't necessarily want to or can move the objects in your frame. But here's one thing you can move, and that's you. So you can take a step to the right, to the left, you can get down or up, and think about where your subject is located in the frame, whether it's in a corner or in the middle, And then also think where the subject is in relation to other things happening in the frame. Is that subject in the foreground, the midground, or the background? And there's not necessarily one right answer here as to where to put your subject. Sometimes I find in the foreground, and especially using that shallow depth of field, that person is really in focus and we kind of start there, and then the eye leads to the rest of the photo that's not so in focus, the background. But sometimes you can put them in the background and have the foreground blurred, like leaves of a tree or other people even. And they act as kind of a border or almost a frame. Which leads me to another component in your composition that you can use. Frame. Sometimes there's a natural frame, like an archway or some leaves on a tree, that can give you a natural kind of border around the subject and really make them obvious that way. And then there are also leading lines. I love leading lines. Whether that's a road or trail or rails on a bridge or just a handrail, if you can find leading lines that lead right to your subject, then it's really a beautiful composition because the subject is very obvious. They pop right out of the photo, and it's really like taking the hand of your viewer and saying, here, follow me to the subject. So if you can get something like that, it works really well. Trails, streets, like I said, bridges, they all exist in the environment if we're being intentional and kind of paying attention for those. And now for the last tip, and it's lighting. Remember way back at the beginning, I said what we are drawn to as humans are what's in focus and what's lighter. So if it's sharply focused and it's bright, we're going to go right there. That's the first thing we're going to look at, and that tends to be where our eyes will sit. So we'll really take that in, and it'll be obvious, oh yeah, that's my subject. They really stand out because of those two things. Now, we can control if it's sharp or not, but can we control if it's lit or not? Not always. If you're in a studio, sure, you can put lighting on your subject. But when you're traveling, you're not carrying lights around with you, I'm assuming. So you can, again, move yourself in relation, and sometimes the light might hit your subject in a different way depending on how you move around, but not always. So here's what you do. You do the best you can with depth of field and composition and getting those leading lines and getting everything to lead to your subject the best you can. And then afterwards, you take a look at that photo and you pop it into Lightroom and you can do a few edits. You can do some amazing things with editing in the lighting department. And that is what we're going to talk about in the next video. So let me know in the comments, do you get your photos back sometimes and think, I don't even know what this is a photo of? And if so, I can't wait to hear which one of these tips you're most excited to try. Now, if you want some overall tips and resources for your travel photography, make sure you grab the free Crazy Good Photo Starter Kit. And of course, there is a link for that below. I hope this was helpful. I can't wait to see in the comments which tip you're most excited to try out. And I'll see you in the next video where we're going to talk about editing these photos to make that subject really pop. I'll see you soon.